Thank you so much for bringing that energy back onto our last session for today. And I would like to remind everybody who is joining us and you that today we are having a 12-hour marathon on China's digital marketing and e-commerce. This was our Digital China Day. We started in the morning at 9 a.m. China time. We spoke about China's digital lifestyle, technology, and innovation. Then we moved on to the section on Chinese consumers. Then we spoke about China's digital marketing. Just now, we have wrapped up a phenomenal session on China's e-commerce and new retail. And we are jumping straight into the last session for today about luxury and experiences. The moderators for this session on luxury are myself and Nishtha, who is a fellow phenomenal marketer and technology watcher. This session is going to last for 2 hours. We will focus on stories and best practices from leading experts in the field on how international brands and retailers can capture China's luxury opportunity when it comes to both products and experiences. And now with this introduction, I'm going to pass it on to Nishtha to welcome our phenomenal panel.
Hooray! I think we're all pretty much been on Clubhouse for the past, 12 or 24 hours, I guess. So thank you so much, Peggy, Ashley, George, Arnold. It's been amazing, even being a listener, been learning so much in the afternoon sessions. Okay, so let's get started. We would like to introduce our amazing speakers on the stage right now, Pablo, Michelle, Roy, Urvash, and M. And before we get started, I would love all of you to please share a 30 seconds to 1 minute story about yourself. Let's start with your name. 3 words that describes you the most. People should associate with yourself. And what makes you spend so much time working with businesses and brands in the luxury space? Your quick story in a minute, please. Let's start with Pablo. Thank you.
Hey, Nishtha. Can you guys hear me?
All well. Thank you.
Great. Fantastic to be here today. I have to say I was super impressed by the level of energy, the level of insight, and the passion that started early in the morning and went through the day like that. Okay, I'm not going to disrupt your well-timed schedule. So directly about me, my name is Pablo. I'm the managing director and partner at DLG, an agency that focuses on serving, as the name suggests, luxury and premium brands in China, with a focus on digital and evolving over the time through e-commerce and CRM as well. I think a quick story about myself, and I was very interested to look at the profile of the speakers today. I think that when you look at foreigners in China, you have 2 types of foreigners. At least that's the way I look at it. You have the people that had a long-lasting passion about China and that made it a life goal to eventually come here and to find a way to make that dream and ambition to be in China and work in China possible. And you have the opportunistic ones. I was definitely an opportunistic one. I was working for DLG in Switzerland with a focus on the watch industry, because this is what we do in Switzerland. And then eventually in 2012, when China became an important focus, the CEO of our company needed someone to go to Shanghai, and I just stepped in and then jumped on the opportunity to move. And what was at first a very opportunistic move that was supposed to last 1 year ended up lasting 9 years. And 9 years later, I'm happy to say that I'm not planning to go anywhere. And that's pretty much how it started. I think that's what we always try to do. And that's been pretty much the way we've built our activities here, and how I built my profile and skill set in the market was the same. The luxury industry is not known as an early adopter, not necessarily known as an industry. And I like to think that it changed now, but at first was definitely not perceived as an industry that was driving innovation. So pretty much we had to learn on how to embrace all those new topics and all those new challenges as they came, starting with digital, evolving into CRM. And about 2 years ago, we're looking at e-commerce that was meant to happen for the luxury industry, because they went through all those roadblocks trying to develop it on their own websites with their private channels and so on. And then it was obvious that the marketplace would come in play. And so I did exactly what I did when I arrived in 2012. I met with a bunch of brands just trying to identify what were their topics and what their challenges approaching, more specifically Tmall. And I was astonished by the consistency of their challenges that were pretty much the same for each one of them. Creative services applied to Tmall were an issue. Integrated marketing on how to support Tmall from outside was an issue. Knowledge of the luxury industry, how it operates, being able to strategize going further and beyond discounts and GWP were an issue. And ability also to reconciliate local teams with headquarters on a topic that is still very sensitive from a headquarter point of view. And this is where we realized that we might have a role to play. And pretty much while we were conducting those interviews at the same time, we got lucky enough to be approached by several TPs. Josh was one of the very first TP we worked with in China, but also like big ones like Buy Quickly, Baozun, and that was our introduction into that topic. And I think that it reflects well how the market evolves so bad. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, Pablo. Thank you so much. This was we'll come back to your insights very soon. For others, just a kind reminder: just try to keep it under a minute. About 3 keywords that defines you, and what has been your key story in relation to why you are working in this luxury space. Thank you so much. Let's go to UV Urvash, whom I happened to meet last night with Peggy. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nishtha, and what a lovely panel we have. I've been listening to everybody, even the previous sessions for the last 2 hours, and I have to say, you guys you're doing an amazing job. I don't even know how you find the energy to just sit there and go through this entire marathon of talks, but hats off to you guys. So very quickly about myself, 3 words. So it's really hard to put myself in 3 words, but I'll try. I would say innovative, I'm a lot of fun, and the last one, I'd probably take a bit of leeway, so I'd say I'm a strategic risk taker. Why did I choose this luxury industry? I actually did not choose it. I got pushed into it, which was a good thing. But I've stayed in this sector primarily because after experiencing it, I truly believe that it is one industry that can really bring about a change at a cultural and a human level. And it's something that kind of speaks to every person and every aspect of life. And it doesn't have to be a very luxury or a very expensive experience. Just how the industry is. It just speaks to everybody. So that's why I stayed in this particular sector. And why China? I mean, it's just the speed at which China is growing, the adaptability. You're looking at the consumer behavior of the Chinese consumers here, and the spending capacity. It is just mind blowing. I mean, when we're talking about how much people are spending and buying in China versus what they're doing abroad, it's just phenomenal. So very, very quickly, that was me.
Thank you so much, UV. What about Michelle? Or can you help me confirm if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, please?
Yeah. Good morning. It feels like Saturday evening. It's 11 a.m. here in the UK. But the party music definitely got me going already. So yeah, it's Michel. It's a French first name, but I am Dutch, and I do have a Chinese last name spelt in a Dutch way. Confuses the hell out of people usually. So yeah, my 3 words. I guess curious, geeky, and a bit creative. I would describe myself. So I was formerly global head of digital at De Beers Jewelers, which is why I'm joining the luxury conversation today. I led a big digital transformation there. We used to be a joint venture with LVMH and De Beers Group, but we got fully owned by De Beers Group, and we were a little bit behind in the digital space. From scratch and redid everything for in a 2-year program, and one of the key things was a stronger digital presence in China. as well. So worked from a head office perspective with our local teams there on launching in Tmall, launching on WeChat, launching WeChat CRM, WeChat e-commerce. And that's where I really fell in love with China marketing. Just the diversity of the ecosystem, the speed at which it moves, and the opportunities for innovation is something that I haven't seen before in my career in the West. So since then, I really want to stay in this space, and actually joined one of my suppliers who was doing everything WeChat related for us. So now I'm SVP at Chat Labs, where I'm heading sales and marketing for them globally.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can we also have M? Nice to see you, M, here as well.
Yeah, Gong Si Fa Cai. Happy New Year to everyone. I am very happy to join this discussion. I think I would like to apologize in advance for all the French accents. Obviously, as soon as we speak about luxury, French people then all come on board. So apologies for that. Yeah, just quickly, who I am, 3 words: art, culture, craftsmanship. Art, obviously, very linked to luxury. A lot of the products that come out of the luxury houses have a foothold in the art world. And I think since like the 17th century, art has become an integral part of the luxurious lifestyle across the different, different societies and the different groups of people. When it comes to the culture, obviously luxury for each one and every culture is going to be very specific. In China, the luxury culture is quite specific as well. I was privy enough and lucky enough to live and work in China, and again in the luxury industry, and this is something that I hope we will be able to exchange a bit more. And the last piece is the craftsmanship element. So obviously luxury means savoir-faire, skill, how to make things a very special way, the kind of product material that is used in designing and producing, the different products that are in the luxury space. And finally, the reason why I'm into this space, I think, first of all, I did my classes at L'Oréal after I graduated, and I finished school. And then after that, I started working on the agency side, and I always worked with a luxury brand. I worked with beauty luxury brand in North America. And then I actually worked in Paris handling the budget for Kering before going to China and creating the agency that Uvash worked for now, L'Atelier. We actually won the business in 2017 at the time, and my task was to create the agency for China, which I did. And then I left China by the end of 2018, and I think Uvash later joined. So I think a lot of the people around the panel will definitely have a lot of common traits in terms of what we are going to be talking about today.
Thanks so much. Okay, let's get started. A lot of people spoke about why they are into this space. I was actually expecting a very interesting answer about that we are in this space because we enjoy luxury products or luxury experiences. Jokes apart, so let's get started on the first question, which is demystifying Chinese luxury consumers. Actually, this morning around 11 a.m., we were running a session here on Chinese consumers, and there was a huge discussion. There is nothing like one Chinese consumer. There are shades of consumers, especially sub-segments, from single women to super moms to pet lovers, etc. And the question for all of you is that what do you see, or who do you see as the Chinese luxury consumers? Is there a sub-segment of this luxury consumer? And what are the changing tastes? For example, what I have observed is especially Chinese consumers born between 1980 and 85 identified with the craftsmanship of luxury goods, right? But about 40-50%, some studies show about 50% of the millennials in China actually don't like big logos and big old style logo-driven luxury branding. They are more into experiences. So question for you, who are these Chinese luxury consumers? What are the sub-segments who are buying into that and the changing taste? Anybody who wants to go first? can jump in. Or maybe Pablo wants to start about the Chinese consumers.
Sure.
Who do you see they are?
Well, I listened to attention to the discussion this morning, and I think that a lot of very relevant points were raised, and they apply to the luxury consumers as well. It's very difficult, obviously, to do that by solely relying on demographics indicators because of the size of the market, because of the variety of consumers, and you were mentioning very rightfully all those different profiles that can be identified, and all of them with different motivations toward luxury, towards what it means, from the true luxury consumers to the growing middle class, obviously. So this is a very difficult exercise, and that becomes even more tricky when you look at the young segments that are not only the millennials, but even the Gen Z now, that on some categories already account for more than the millennials actually, as luxury spenders. So I think it's really difficult to identify a specific type of customers or consumer. What is interesting in my perception is more to look at their persona. And indeed, as you mentioned, on some of the key shifts of how luxury is experienced and appreciated in comparison with what it used to be. And I think that we have a few key elements that we can look at here. And I'm going to try to list a few of them that would come to mind. I think that the first one is that people are much more selective on how they shape their own perception and much more distinguished about it. So to really have an evolution from prior to in the past, I would say that the impact of the word of mouth versus now the importance of trusted curators that empowers even more the role of the influencers, but not necessarily in terms of the mass ones, but in terms of being prescriptors and advisors and playing that role of trusted curator. The second one is that the young audience definitely has a perception of the heritage that has been a very important part of most of the luxury brands. And that really appreciates over heritage now, that element of modernity. And we see a lot of brands that need to reinvent themselves in a very contemporary way now to meet those expectations. That translates also into an idea of those signature design, those iconic, timeless pieces, which now are being challenged by an appreciation from the audience with much more disruptive design, limited edition, exclusive editions, products that are not meant to be timeless and become classic and stay forever. The evolution of the big logo to the more discreet brand codes. You don't need at some point, luxury is not anymore a kind of status symbol to be recognized by anyone. You want to be acknowledged by the one that matters, and hence a preference for discrete brand codes. Elements of price. In the past, the selection and the status symbol of luxury was once again directly linked to your ability to purchase the product, while now it's much more about an idea of a VIP distinction. It's more about having the access to the product rather than being able to purchase it. A lot of scarcity is created around that. To make sure that to purchase specific and highly sought after product is not just a matter of whether you can afford it. I think that Em was talking about craftsmanship, which obviously is a very important pillar of the luxury of any luxury brand. But we can see also that leaning towards now more and more appreciation for the conceptual value over purely the materials and the hours of work realized by the artisans behind and all of that. And we also have very interesting new trends that appear now, I think, that are shaping consumer perception. And one that we can observe is the value to resell, not necessarily that consumers purchase luxury as an investment with an idea of reselling it, but the idea of those very few iconic products that are worth more from the moment you buy them than what they are actually worth at a retail price, increase the attractivity of those brands and the product that's managed to achieve that. And the last element, I think, that really, in my perception, strongly illustrate that concept of the new luxury consumer is that element of being like street style and street incorporated, and being able to really be part of the daily mix and match style of an audience that is not necessarily anymore driven by the idea of formal attire and so on.
Brilliant, Pablo. That was so insightful. I would actually want, if possible, UV to take a lead on that. UV, you work with LVMH. What do you guys define as a luxury consumer? And do you guys observe a changing taste in that?
Thank you, Nishtha. It is a very tricky question, as Pablo mentioned, and it's something that we discuss at LVMH on a daily basis. I kid you not. All the brands that I work with, where there's always this question like, who is our target audience and who is our luxury consumer? I think to a lot of points that Pablo already touched on, but I'll kind of start with a more generalized perspective. And just to keep things in perspective, like if you look at just the spending, again, I'll come touch on that. Last year, the millennials, or I would say the post-80s generation, at an average spent about over 400 million RMB, which roughly covers about 55 to 56% of the spending. And the Gen Z, which hasn't been clearly defined yet. Some studies say they're the people born after 96. Some say they're born after 98, but chabudo. They spent last year averagely about 170 million RMB. Direct or indirect spending, which means they influence their parents to spend as well, which is about 23-24% of the spending. And majority of these kids are not even working right now. So you can imagine the strength, the purchase power that they have. And what we usually talk about is the shift in the or the change in the trend of the consumer. So if you look at the consumer behavior or the purchasing behavior of millennials 2 years, 3 years back, a lot of them were buying the brand, right? So they were placing a lot of importance on the brand itself. And what we see right now is that they're not just buying the brand, they're buying into a brand. And what I mean by that is that they're placing a lot of importance on the craftsmanship or the history behind the brand. And then at a lot of points, it kind of coincides with what the younger audience is also looking for. Gen Zs, for example, they want experiences, which even the millennials are kind of looking at now, because they're actually quite bored of walking into a store and just seeing the same stuff over and over again. They want to see an experience. So, which is why you see that there's a lot of pop-up stores, even luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Dior, etc., which never really ventured towards that side, have started creating these pop-up stores, especially in the lower tier cities. We did a big pop-up store in Wuhan, which was very well received by the locals there. So we see this change in trend from the millennials, but then the question that we ask is, what is exactly driving this trend, right? And we've not really been able to pinpoint a reason. And I think that's where the answer lies. If we can understand what is it that's driving this change in trend, is it from the younger audience permeating into the older audience, or vice versa, or is it geographical changes, or is it political changes? We're not being able to kind of figure out yet. But long story short, I think a lot of points are right. We can't really pin down exact to say like who is the luxury audience or luxury consumer, but there are these obvious buyers into luxury, and the definition of luxury is changing. It's not an expensive, really exclusive brand or a really exclusive experience anymore. It's all about what speaks to you as fashion, what speaks to you as luxury, and it's something unique. It's something that is very, very customized, and I think that's and quality, of course. Initially, quality was never really a question; it was a given. But now the younger audience is really, really, they're asking about quality and convenience. So the definition is changing.
Yeah, I think Pablo and Uwesh very, very right in this area. I think the question around what is the consumer can't be answered anymore in terms of the traditional marketing terms such as segmenting by demographic, right? Everybody always tries to define their audience as in they are this old and they're from this region and they have this gender and therefore they're interested in this, and that old style kind of consumer segmentation doesn't work anymore. So what I've seen and what we at the BIS saw as well, that yes, initially it was predominantly about the quality and the craftsmanship of the products, which was the appeal for luxury. Then there was an evolution towards the aesthetics and design, so more aligning to the brand in terms of the aesthetic, actually wearing the brand, wearing the logo, and to basically adopt their style. And the latest trend, which is what Dove was just mentioning, is that it's trending more towards individual sense of style, and luxury consumers are now not just buying the brand and the logo to dress themselves in it and to show that they can afford it and that they identify with it, but they're trying to create their own styles by combining different elements and different brands. So it's more about curating your own style now based on your not just design interests and aesthetic interests, but also in terms of your own personal values, and then borrowing from brands that also align to the same values that you have. So everything is becoming way and way more individual, which makes it actually harder for marketers to identify what is my ideal consumer that I'm going after, because it's really consumers are mix and matching much more than they did before.
So I will throw a bit of a wrench in terms of what was just said, just because I'm a data guy. And what I can talk about is actually what the data shows and what the data says. When you look at the data in terms of the spend, in terms of the assets availability, or what basically people's worth is, or basically what are their means, there are a few things that you can actually try to understand pretty clearly. First of all, there's luxury and then there's luxury. In China, more than anywhere else, you have the super rich. So basically the people who basically, are not rich, but they are super rich. So the ultra net worth individuals. And for them, luxury and what they consider to be luxury, it's all about their wealth. It's about the inheritance. It's about preservation of their status. So when it comes to spending, those are the people who are going to be buying the 1.5 mil, luxury or jewelry pieces. And I think the way you will define their behavior, the way you will see them, it's going to be very, very different in terms of how you're going to look at what is considered today to be I would say the fastest rising segment or group, which is the affluent middle class. And these guys are more of them located in lower tier cities. This is why a lot of the local international luxury brands are going to those lower tier cities. And for them, luxury still is actually about showing the success. It's still about defining and showing that they are a part of this luxury segment, and they are part of the people that can own things and can buy things. And then the third group is what is usually and correctly called the rich millennials. And by the way, just a quick word here, the millennials are people that are already past 40. So if we could stop calling them that, that'd be great. But that group is, in fact, if I can just take a comparison with, for example, the US. Whereas in the US, 30% of the wealthy consumers are below the age of 45. 80% of them are actually in China. So there's a high proportion of women as well in that rich segment versus, for example, any other places in the world. And very true to what Urvi said, and Pablo as well. The way to define luxury has evolved, but you can take a look at some key elements here. And when you did the study, we looked at two big segments within that sub-segment within that group. The first one is the Fu Dai, and then the second one is the Fu San Dai. And the Fu Dai basically are a bit kind of like the people who are part of the new rich kind of like, families, and for them, buying those brands, those luxury brands is very important. Whereas the Fu San Dai are coming from families who have had wealth pretty much since the 80s or 70s in China. And for them, it's all going to be about really looking at the higher function of luxury conceptually in terms of trying to define the individualistic values and ethics around luxury. So there is elements in data that can really inform the understanding of who the consumers are today in terms of the luxury and the luxury customers. But it's definitely not something that is completely not understandable.
Absolutely. And I think that's the whole beauty of China right now, and at least how brands and businesses have been responding during the COVID times, to be agile, to be responsive, and not necessarily having a long-term plan. Because I think to survive in China or to leverage China or Asia, you have to ride with the market and experiment and see what works, what doesn't, right? So moving on and taking a cue from what you guys have been sharing is that, of course, we know that despite the travel bans during COVID, there has been a huge uptake in luxury, right? So the transformation of the luxury industry, let's call it the adaptation of the luxury industry, has been going on. There was a recent study from Alibaba's Tmall platform in together with Bain, which actually mentioned that about 48 to 50% of growth is happening in luxury market vis-a-vis previous year. And one of the reasons is travel ban, right? So from your expertise or your experiences, what do you think are the key drivers or changes happening in the luxury space during these COVID times? Any real examples? I think let's get into some real case study examples, practical takeaways of how brands have leveraged the COVID times for leveraging this luxury explosion in China. Any view?
Sure, I'll take a first stab, because I was actually running the business during the COVID outbreak, starting in China and then after, which was an interesting time for sure. So I think what we saw, and you're right there with your percentages, overall in 2020 is what was happened is we saw a 45% increase in the market growth in luxury in China, and that's versus pre-COVID. And the rest of the world was on average was about minus 25%, depending on which brand people are working for. I'm not going to share details on where I was, so it's a general trend, but that was peaks and troughs, and from a month to month, you didn't know where you were standing, right? So during 2020, you can't really say this is how we dealt with COVID, because every month things changed. Like, we're closing stores here, we're opening stores there, so everything was very, very reactive. We did know, and brands did know, that they have to start embracing digital tools. But initially, the view was this is going to be over in a short amount of time. China got over it pretty quickly. So that was the initial view. But then quite quickly after that, suddenly everybody came to the understanding that this was going to be a long-term thing. And we had big campaigns coming up, big launches. We had big live events planned. So everybody had to go into replanning mode for during the COVID times, and that's where the adaptation of digital obviously became key. Every campaign that was planned for early in the year had to be reworked in terms of the entire concept and execution to be digital first, And for hard luxury, where I was in, that is incredibly hard, because that's never been the way it's done traditionally. It's very much focused on physical events. So we had to look at how we virtually launch products. So changing from what traditionally was launching a product line in Paris at a physical show, a physical event, to launching that through live streaming on a global stage rather than on a local stage in Europe. So that was a big thing. Obviously, much more focused on e-commerce, price points going up, stuff that was previously not even allowed to be sold online or went online, including the highest ticket items. I think there's a tremendous uptake on AR and VR now as well for luxury brands, to be able to show how jewelry or watches or fashion can show on an individual whilst the stores were physically not open. And there was also a big push around how we're going to use the staff, because obviously we have all these stores closed, and we have all the wealth of expertise in terms of people that work in the stores that know everything about our products, that deal on a day-to-day basis with our clients and serve them almost as a concierge as well. So how to help digitize the store staff to be able to have that continued relationship with their clients and serve them as much as they can through digital means. Those are the main things that we saw change during COVID.
I think that's fantastic. Anybody else wants to share a real example of how brands have leveraged to ride on this explosive growth? I think one key reminder you gave, Michelle, on this whole adaptation or pivot from being more retail focused to being much more of an e-commerce or online retail adoption, right? So any examples which comes to mind where brands have really gone all out on e-commerce even without a retail presence or less retail presence?
I'm happy to jump in and share a few examples that I think are just like a direct extension of what Michelle was sharing. And I think that, as Michelle said, it's not as if we figured out how to leverage COVID. Is that for those 2-3 months that felt like an eternity, everybody was in survival mode. And what was interesting was to look at what were those key points, those key pain points, and how that drove actual solutions. And that's after that speeded up all of that. So obviously, e-commerce acceleration is the first one that comes to mind. The rollout calendar of luxury brands on Tmall in 2020 was absolutely crazy, and COVID-19 was one of the key things to accelerate that. I think that on the example that Michelle was mentioning on how to better equip the sales associates, that was a fantastic example, because we directly had clients that had their concerns about the live streaming formats, not when it comes to highly sophisticated live streaming to broadcast a fashion show. When it comes to a sales-driven live streaming with your sales associate that is going to talk about 2 hours for your product, just like it should be and like it is on Taobao, but for luxury brands, there was a big gap with that. Now, in the midst of COVID, when your stores are empty and you need to keep your sales associate busy, that's something that definitely pretty much motivated brand to try that format, because I'm not sure they would have tried that format otherwise, and really leading those brands to also realize that you can do great, sophisticated live streaming broadcasted to millions to support branding, PR, and communication purposes. But you can also have very targeted sales live streaming that you set for closed community of clients that are not about wowing them with an amazing experience, but it's about providing very functional and actionable recommendations for their purchase. So I think that was a very interesting example. The same happened with clienteling. I think that post-COVID-19, the brand that managed to rebound the fastest were the ones that actually had a strong CRM database, because it was easier for them to reactivate their best clients. by inviting them back to the stores. And so that was interesting for us to observe some of our clients. Some of our clients, their point of sales turned out into call centers because they didn't have clienteling solutions in place, because they didn't have robust CRM database in place. And so their sales associates were just calling their clients all day long by either figuring out how to get the phone number of my clients in the CRM database or using my personal WeChat accounts. And that's something that I advocated very strongly about the importance of CRM and clienteling.
Pablo, that was great. How do we leverage repeat purchase, right? And for those who might not be super familiar with the word clienteling, anybody wants to take it over? Maybe Urvash or M, about just giving a short synopsis of clienteling, and if any of your brands have leveraged it very interestingly in the last 6 to 12 months.
Sylvie, you want to go first? Because I have just an example I just want to talk about, which was maybe not so much the clienteling, more in terms of how a luxury brand did adapt to the COVID condition. As you guys know, fine spirit, single malt whiskey and like the Hennessy's of this world and the Belvedere and all these like really luxury spirits brand. The biggest source of some of the revenues was coming from the travel and the traveling industry. And during COVID, a few things had to be adjusted. So, for example, we were working with a luxury brand called Dalmore. And during COVID, what they have actually realized was that instead of focusing on those big international hubs, like Paris, London, New York, LX, in order to produce and actually get, some of their revenues, they actually needed to look at how China behavior in terms of traveling had changed during COVID. So instead of long haul, there was like short haul. Destinations like Taiwan, for example, like Japan, or even South Korea had become quite popular, as well as internal destination, within China as well, with some of those luxury vacation islands in the coast of China, which also had picked up. So a lot of the things we started doing was working with some of those apps that people use on the airports to kind of like, either to book their flights or find their way out there. We started partnering with some of those platforms and the apps on those airports in order to enable the brands to reach to these consumers who were changing their behavior because of the environment taking place. So it's not really directly related to your question, but I kind of like just wanted to share that example in terms of showing how you can adapt given what happened and what's still going on with COVID in the traveling.
Sure. Peggy, thank you so much, Em. Peggy, you wanted to say something?
Can I jump in?
Yes, hi. Nishtha, I just wanted to reset the room a little bit and make some announcements. Thank you so much, everybody who's been joining the Wechat groups in the background. We have over 800 people who are joining these communities to jointly share stories, real life stories, living in and working with China. And so if you're not already joined in our Wechat groups, please add me at Shanghai Peggy on Wechat, and I'll add you to the groups. We have many different topics, different rooms that people are planning, like Ashley and Nishtha and George have been doing with this digital day. Everything from China, Brazil, China, UAE, China, Latin America, to sustainability, digital transformation, moving to China, the future of education, and many, many more. So definitely welcome you to join the Wechat community. For those of you who are interested in what the speakers are saying, please do tap on their icon, give them a follow, and hit the bell so that you're notified whenever they speak on Clubhouse in a room. We also have organized a joint calendar of all rooms that are talking about mainland China. So if you join, we'll give you that link and you can follow along on 18th of this month, February 18th. we'll be interviewing the co-founder of McKinsey China, who will be looking back in the last 30 years of China development and then predicting the future based on this. He's the second most quoted McKinsey consultant in, I think, globally. That's Jonathan Wetzel. And then on the 23rd, I'll be interviewing Kevin Liu, who's the chairman of Asia for Partners Group, one of the largest funds in the world. He's also with the Milken Institute and the World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders in Yale in US. We also have tomorrow a China speed dating room, specifically, China speed on dating apps for the Valentine's Day edition. And on, I think, March 5th, we are live streaming a keynote from the MIT Asia Business Conference for the president of Xiaomi. So many, many different exciting rooms, even more than that, are already scheduled. So please do give me a follow on Clubhouse with a bell. Reach out to me either on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, WeChat at Shanghai Peggy, and get involved in telling the China story to the West. We want to make sure that all of your voices are heard. This is a very unique platform to basically reach out heart to heart, human to human, to people all around the world to tell the real China story. So back to you, Nishtha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Dating with China. I think that is a good trigger word. If we can continue on that. To our lovely panelists, thank you once again. Before we move into an audience Q&A, which Ashley will help lead moving forward, quick last note to the panelists. What do you think has been very interesting tactics or strategies where luxury brands have been dating the Chinese consumers in a very interesting way? I think one example Yui gave is about the pop-up stores and how it's not about a fixed experience, but a very adaptive experience. Can we be more specific with any other brand example besides pop-up or within pop-up or other sorts of experiences where brands have been dating and luring the Chinese consumers successfully in luxury?
I think I'll take lead on that very, very quickly. I'll give you a few examples. When we talk about the format, I think especially in China, there are only a few formats that can reach a big audience, what luxury brands need and they want. So just to give an example on that note would be live streaming. I think the way the luxury brands are targeting the consumers via live streaming is, I think it's quite creative. And I'll give the example of the recent live stream shows that Louis Vuitton and Dior did. Louis Vuitton brought in, they work with Virgil Abloh and created this really unique live stream fashion show, which was not really like a fashion show. It was more like something about a storytelling, and they kind of leveraged on the recent wave of, Black Pride that was coming in. And I think personally, I felt it was very creative, but even the feedback that was received for this particular fashion show online was tremendous. And so that was one example. The second thing, what Dior did was they had two versions. They had the men's fashion show and the women's fashion show. Men's was far better received than the women's one, which was surprising. But what they did really good was they had a panel of Chinese celebrities start off discussion about fashion and some trends and whatever's going on in recently. Talk about that for about 10 minutes, and then there was the fashion show itself, and then they ended up with another panel discussion. So it kind of and they got in different aspects. So they got some. So they got some KOLs, they got some movie actors, some online, very, very affluent people who've got a huge lots of followers online. So they got these different people from different walks of life to talk about different aspects that spoke to the fashion show. So I think that kind of, it was really smart. and then they kind of combined it with an offline experience. So if you happen to walk into a Dior showroom right now, you'll see those aspects of what they live streamed on the fashion show in the store itself. So you get this, not only this online experience, but you get this offline experience as well. And then you walk and you're like, oh hey, yeah, I noticed that on the live streaming. So I think this is something that is really, really creative and interesting that they're doing. I don't know how long this wave is going to last for, though. So that's the next question that we're kind of asking within the brands.
Very nice. Actually, just reminded this morning we were having a discussion on China innovation, and Alvin from HTC Vive was talking about Valencia, the luxury brand, and how they have been leveraging virtual reality, VR, to create very engaging experiences, which they would have never wanted to do, let's say, a year ago. So glad to know that. Anybody else who wants to build that on how luxury brands are actually coaching and dating Chinese consumers differently in the past few months?
I think a couple of things.
Yeah, so
I think two things that I know I've done in the past, like I know Orpha's just mentioned the big live streaming event with massive audiences is obviously it's been a thing. I think we're seeing also more and more adoption on actually private live streaming. So with very small, curated, invite-only groups, specifically in the hard luxury domain, which is working out really well. And on the mass side, for the younger audience, I think what's really interesting is a lot of collaborations of luxury brands with the gaming industry, where or even developing their own games like Burberry did to tie into that whole ecosystem. I think is a new interesting way that luxury brands are connecting with the younger consumer as well.
Do you want to say something?
Oh yeah, sorry. I just great point. Actually, Michelle touched on it. I wanted to talk about some of the initiatives we're taking by some of the luxury brands around special associations. Even I think one of the key things that happened because of COVID is the rise of the athleisure. Everything about being more casual, being more relaxed, less formal. And this is something that I think a lot of people have started seeing in terms of some of the fashion shows and the collections coming out, which is much more street related, which is much more relaxed in terms of how they are being designed and created overall. And what we can see as well in terms of how the fashion, how the luxury brands are actually doing well in China is with some of those completely unexpected sort of like collaborations, or some of those co-ops, like it's called in our lingo. So, for example, you have LV with Supreme collection back in 2017, but you can see what happened last year with Dior actually collaborating with Nike. You have like Moncler with Hiroshi Fujiwara as well. And those kind of collabs have a huge impact and are very popular with the Chinese audience, who really do not, like I said earlier, do not really say the actual line defining what is super luxury and more like the street culture and the younger culture coming up. So yeah, collaboration is definitely something that is done pretty well by the luxury brands in China.
Sure. I mean, just my last Yubi, just a quick note actually addressed to you, because you're working inside a brand, client side, brand side. What is the main reason for this mindset shift? Because earlier, luxury brands used to take a much longer, long-planned, headquarter-driven view. And now things are pivoting at a much faster pace. So besides COVID, like what is actually enabling this mindset shift within the brand side, senior leadership, let's say?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because I literally have that slide open in front of me right now. It's I would say predominantly that trend was bound to happen given the speed at which China is growing and given the amount that the consumers within China are spending. So it was bound to happen sooner or later. It just happened sooner because of COVID. And I'll give you an example. So there's almost about 73% of the consumers that were not spending or barely spending inside China are spending locally now. So that's an added 73% more to whoever was spending within the industry within China. And right now, just for LVMH itself, China, as of 2020, accounted for averagely about 70% of their global revenue. So you can imagine how big. And so you can imagine. So that's the main reason, right? Everybody's eyes are on China. Everybody's looking onto what's going on here, and everybody's looking at China's speed. So things change really fast here. You talk about digital, you talk about fashion trends, you talk about anything. Things change really fast here. And that's why every brand has to keep up. Em and Michael talked about collaborations, and we can see so often LV collaborated with Supreme, and we see those new trends happening. So there's a lot of these collabs happening almost every month. At the same time, there's a bit of a risk factor involved in these collaborations. Some collaborations are accepted, and some collaborations are not seen as what the consumer would perceive the brand to be like. And for example, Gucci collaborating with Doraemon was not as well received as it should have been. So there is that bit of a risk factor that's involved, but primarily, I would say why everything is changing right now is because all eyes are on China. And I'll give you another example to that. Last year, I was consulting for another, before I started with LVMH, I was consulting for another French company that's into certification and testing. And these guys were literally dinosaurs. I kid you not. And if you know the industry, it's basically somebody sends a scientist to a location to do all the testing, and nobody wanted to digitalize or change anything. And those guys started using drones instead of sending people there. So if an industry like that can change, luxury is still far ahead. And that's why you see that huge change happening right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, this is really insightful. Just a quick note, once again, I'd like to thank all of you. I have to run into something else, what I'm doing, running today. If you want to follow any of us and all of us to keep tab with the China evolving market, transformation, etc., digital tech, please do follow all of us, because we'll be doing more sessions and inviting actually more speakers and moderators with us in the coming months, including a session not just on China in itself, but China, UAE, China, US, but also China, India, and you'll be hearing more from us. I'd like to hand over to Ashley, our co-moderator for today. Thank you, Ashley, to take the audience Q&A forward, so more audience can raise their hands and discuss with the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nishtha. That was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Woohoo! Yes. Guys, we still have 1 hour to go, and I would like to quickly reset the room. Today, for the whole day, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., we were talking about digital China, and particularly we reviewed digital innovation, technology, and lifestyle in China in the first section. Second section was about Chinese consumers. Then we moved on to talk about digital marketing in China and the creative economy. Then we just finished the section on e-commerce and new retail, and now we are in our last section talking about luxury in China and experiences in China as well. So we have just completed our panel discussion, and now we're going to be opening the stage for your questions. So I'm going to open hand raising function for everybody. Now, how do you ask a question? Let me remind you. In order to ask a question, you go to your profile. So you click in the upper right corner onto your profile, you edit your bio. So the first sentence in your bio must contain either question, and then in a few words, what is your question about, or contribution, meaning that you want to add something onto our discussion. That will be much easier for us to curate and bring people on stage. Meanwhile, as mentioned and Nishtha mentioned, do follow these phenomenal experts in the luxury industry and in China here on stage. I would also like to once again encourage all of you to follow Peggy. Peggy is the center of gravity when it comes to everything China related here on Clubhouse and beyond. And if you would like to be added onto our WeChat groups, definitely add her on WeChat at Shanghai Peggy, one word, and she will be adding you onto one of the WeChat groups for your specific interest, let's say sustainability in China, or as we said, Latin America in China, etc., etc. This whole session, 12 hours, was recorded, and we will be sharing those recordings in the WeChat groups for our audience to enjoy, for those that missed some sections. Okay, I see a couple of hands raising, and while others are doing and basically changing their bios, I would like to ask questions to our phenomenal panel. And anyone who wants to pick up the question, please go ahead. So my question would be, there is a lot of talk, and there's been this talk for the past couple of years about the rise of Chinese brands, and in particularly in luxury sector as well. At the first, it was sort of a joke. Everybody was saying, oh my God, what kind of luxury brands can really come out of China? But right now it's not so funny anymore, because we are seeing Chinese domestic brands, first of all, producing high quality products. Maybe their story is not so strong yet, their heritage, but nonetheless, they're opening stores next to big players in major cities. So I would like to understand, what is your take? Are these Chinese brands taking over? Are they coming for international luxury brands? Which sectors are specifically affected, and how soon will they essentially come, and what are international brands doing in order to keep their position? It's a huge question. So any aspect of it if you would like to comment on any aspect of it, that would be phenomenal.
Well, I can jump in. Hi there. Hi, Ashley. Hi, Nishtha. Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for setting up this room. On this precise question, the thing that first comes to my mind is Shanxia, the brand that Hermès was owning and recently sold to an Italian investment fund, which is linked to the automotive industry. I do think there's a huge potential and future for Chinese native brands in European and American markets, but it's just also all about the I think the desire of these brands to really approach Europe and the US as a market. I do think this is there's not enough happening there, and there's also as a lack of visibility on those players seen from the European perspective, whether you take now, I don't know, a Dover Street Market or Selfridges or those great retailers who are always chasing new products. There's not enough happening in Europe or in the US regarding emerging Chinese brands. So I think this is a very exciting thing to explore and like forward as other people have a comment on this. I take this opportunity also to quickly, because I really asked to get on stage because I've been listening for an hour now. It's been really exciting, and I just want to also do a quick mini intro. I'm a London-based brand consultant. I worked 10 years for Louis Vuitton and 6 years for Cartier as an executive, as regional CEO, and now been completely focusing on digital transformation, China, and sustainability. So my business is very much about providing services and introduction to B2B suppliers into the luxury goods industry. So it's a service platform and a digital platform with a very strong consulting focus. And I would very much invite people who are in the audience to connect with me. I'm very keen on connecting with B2B service providers who target the European and American luxury goods industry to team up. I'm based in London, and I really want to expand my network within China regarding service providers to grow business either on the e-commerce side or also digital and virtual brand experience. Thanks to have allowed me to pitch that, but really excited to be on that call, and I will definitely be following your...
Thank you so much, Tom. Some meaningful insights. And of course, do join the WeChat group that we spoke about for the attendees and speakers today in order to network and also connect with others. And that goes to the audience here. And Tom, I'm sure that you're already on the group. To get onto WeChat group, add Shanghai Peggy on WeChat and she will pull you into that group. This is awesome. So anybody else? I mean, are Chinese luxury brands taking over? What's your take, guys? Pablo, Urvash?
Sure, I'll jump onto that bandwagon. I think Chinese brands are emerging, and it's not recent. It's been there for a while. It's just now with the trend that a lot of Chinese MNCs are going abroad. Chinese luxury fashion is also going abroad. As well. Shanghai Tang, Orchili, they were already very well known outside of China. As far as taking over is concerned, I think there's still quite a long way to go because primarily about the consumers, right? People who are going to buy into these brands, there's certain perception shifts that'll have to happen. Especially when we talk about competing with brands like Louis Vuitton, etc., which have a really long history. Some of these Chinese luxury brands are quite young compared to them. So, but then on the flip side, the good thing about them is they're very trendy, they're very niche, they're very unique, and a lot of people buying Chinese luxury brands outside are Chinese. So. I think this trend, this culture is going to emerge out of China. It's going to expand. It's still going to take quite a lot of time where we can say that they would even remotely be a threat. But I think what's, in my personal opinion, what's going to happen is look at Shanghai Tang. They were growing, they were becoming big, and they got acquired. I think that's what we'll see eventually. That'll happen to a lot of these brands. But that's, again, a very personal opinion of mine.
Exciting take. Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, Uwe, you're absolutely right. I was about to talk about the consolidation aspect of things when it comes to luxury. Obviously, currently you have a I don't know even how to qualify it, kind of almost like a freaking tyrannosaur with LVMH owning approximately, if I remember correctly from the numbers from last year, like 60 or 65% of the market. And the distant second is actually the Kering Group with, I think, around 30% of the market. So anytime you have a smaller independent luxury brand coming up and seeing some success, you definitely are going to see them either being acquired or basically needing to merge with another brand in order to be able to survive, because it's a number game, it's a scale game. So even if the Chinese brands, we're seeing some of them actually picking up a little bit. You know, everyone knows about Alexander Wang, for example, as one of the key examples of one of those brands picking up. They are showing some interesting signs in terms of seeing their reputation, their popularity increase, not only in China but across the world, and the influence as well. A lot of the luxury brands, or in terms of fashion, for example, are looking into what the Chinese designers are doing, because it is actually a merge between technology, streets, and craftsmanship, which is something which is really redefining luxury and fashion and style as we know it today. So to answer your question, are they taking over? In a certain sense, yes, they are taking over in terms of the influence and setting up the agenda globally in terms of what is hip, what is woke, what is actually really cool. So I would answer yes when it comes to that part. When it comes to the business side of things, taking over, like Rich said, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
I tell you, one thing to follow probably for this year is luxury hospitality. So that's one that I'm going to be following on keenly this coming year. Because obviously luxury experiences are very hot at the moment, and all the borders will be shut for probably this year, and domestic travel is at a sky high. So I think, like, if you're in luxury hospitality, luxury experiences, physical experiences, I think that's going to really, really skyrocket this year.
We're only going to see that in China for now.
Exactly. I was speaking to some executives at hospitality chains as well, etc., and they're just going in 100% on China, nowhere else.
This is awesome. And in fact, a lot of innovation is coming in that hospitality sector in China right now. They are expanding their capacity. It's becoming a lot more digital. And in fact, new experiences are also popping up. I still remember mid last year how China opened their first giraffe cafe. You know that there is this giraffe themed hotel, and the whole experience is located, somewhere obviously outside of Asian continent. And China opened their own. They imported 4 giraffes, and they created a luxury KOL hotel specifically for that. And they basically changed the landscape and the whole setup to look as if you are really traveling Africa and getting this extremely awesome experience. So just to name a few, some incredible things are happening extremely fast in that sector. Now, let's move on to our audience questions. We already brought up a few people on stage, and I see Mylene here has a question. Mylene, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Splendid panel. I really love it. My name is Milene. I work with excellence and also with digital business. And my question is about, by the way, Ashley, you took my first question, so I have to change my question. I'm very curious about Chinese brands. But my new question is about these Chinese clients, adopting to Chinese clients from the luxury brands. So is there any brand that surprised you doing something special during this Chinese New Year that you could say they were role models doing something special for this occasion? This is a very important date of the year. So any luxury brands that did something really amazing and out of the box?
Let me take a quick stab, and it's not pertaining to fashion. I would say one particular campaign that I saw that really spoke to me was BMW. I don't know if you've seen their recent campaign. It's basically a series of videos that they've launched, which basically, so how BMW is pronounced in Chinese is Pa Ma Wa. So they've literally used those different accents from different regions in different videos and really spoken to what Chinese New Year is actually about. It's all about family. It's all about getting together, spending time with each other, and that really homey sort of an environment. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend you have a look at it. But I think they've done an excellent job.
Yeah, this is something a lot of my friends, like Tom, for example, do not agree with me at all. But I really believe this year Burberry did an amazing job in terms of merging a poetic vision of some of the key insights and the key tensions taking place in China with some of those younger generation. We spoke about the Gen Zs, the desire they have, that really thirst they have for self-expression and freedom. And they really captured that with their long-form ad that they were. I think they actually had that broadcasted across different platforms and the digital platforms in China. But the film itself, the topics that is being touched there, the way it was put together, it speaks to the understanding of the luxury as it is experienced and as it is seen by the younger generation. So I would say Burberry is one of the examples I will list as a success.
Great. I think, Mylene, we answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to Marco. Marco has another question. The stage is yours. Please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Marco, and I'm from Italy. I'm teaching in a university in Wuhan, and I'm also interested in consumer behavior in China. And my question is, do you think live streaming shows like on Douyin or Taobao changed customer behavior in China? And do you think this trend will keep increasing? Thank you very much.
I want to jump in here. Yes, I do indeed. It's a very good question, Marco. Live streaming really has been about creating a new dimension for brands to create live and real time brand experiences which are immersive. What we also see, and this is something actually we had previously a question about, what are the trends now that we, especially in the luxury brands, have been hit by the pandemic. And live video shopping is also, the live video streaming is a fantastic tool to showcase the brand and to do its storytelling. But live video streaming is also now a fantastic tool that has been rolling out globally in order to enhance a one-to-one connection between the brands and the consumer. This really is very much about storytelling, and I do think this is the way forward also in the industry, that brands will even learn how to monetize brand experiences. And I think when it comes to sustainability in fashion, the art will be about selling, earning more money from selling less. So I do think this whole trend of VR and AR immersive brand experiences is really the way forward, because in luxury, it's not about the product. It really is about the storytelling. What gets you hooked is not just purely the quality of the product and the provenance of its raw materials and the craftsmanship. It is most importantly the storytelling. You get hooked to Chanel or to Gucci or Moncler, really for the storytelling and the emotional branding. And this is where I think the virtual streaming, the live streaming really have been bringing a great transformation to the business. That's my point of view. But good question, Marco.
I can jump in on that. Oh, please.
I'll do a quick comment, Pablo, then you can go. My quick comment is, I think it will increase the trend, but I hope it doesn't. I'm in the UK. I've been inside pretty much for like a year now. And I actually can't wait to go into physical stores and hold beautiful products in my hand, touch fabric, see the reflection of light in diamonds through my own eyes, etc. So I am really looking forward to not having to live stream to explore luxury goods.
Well, I think we all are on the same page regarding that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about live streaming, because I think that, we are all very excited about the results it drove in the past, and indeed the impact that it seems to have on consumers and most likely a long-lasting impact. At the same time, I think that we're not talking enough about the business elements related to live streaming. Because right now, all the communications around live streaming are really driven by big numbers in terms of transactions, in terms of how fast the product sold out, etc. The fact is that it's really a struggle for brands to set live streams that are aimed at selling massively a product and at being profitable out of it. If you work with those top live streamers like Li Jiaxi or Via, their commissions can be really high. There will be strong expectations in terms of gift with purchase, in terms of preferential rates. The return rates are through the roof because the audience is pretty much watching their favorite idol presenting a product. They get overexcited, they buy it, and as soon as they receive it, the momentum has passed and they're going to send it back. So I'm not challenging live streaming. I think that live streaming cannot be approached as a one thing. There's different type of formats. Before Urvash was talking about live streaming the Louis Vuitton fashion show, this is not something where you're going to measure the impact of that in terms of sales. It serves another purpose. Michel was mentioning privately hosted live streaming, which are purely sales driven to a small audience. So I think that we really have a broad variety of formats, and some of them are going to be there and are going to stay, I believe, and have a long lasting impact. Some others are going to be challenged. Right now, it's a big challenge to work with big live streamers that start to become picky about the type of brands they want to work with, that give you a slot to be streamed at the same session as 20 other brands on that same day. And I think that the model is not as ideal as what is described. And I think that there are a few challenges related to that model that will be important for the brands to address if they want to indeed have live streaming as something that can be a strong part of what their digital strategy is about, and not just a gimmicky element as part of an activation campaign.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, it is excellent, because we have the same. Actually, we have the same example, same case study with one of our clients who actually had the return rates increased almost double. They went from on average 15-18% return rate. They went to 40% of live streaming, where they were trying to do it in a bigger scale with bigger KOL. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Pablo. It is not something that is just the answer to everything. But I'm also seeing the birth of a significant new type of live streaming in terms of B2B for luxury brands and fashion brands. They're doing a lot more. You guys know how the brands used to have, those showrooms, right, in different cities, and people used to travel to go and look at the collection. Well, COVID has changed all of that. A lot of brands now, what they're doing is they're organizing private live stream for their buyers, for those platforms globally where they can actually sell. And they're having basically their collection, their design being viewed that way by their B2B partners and suppliers. So we're seeing a bit of evolution as well in terms of live stream, not only a B2C or D2C tool, but also something that can be used for B2B.
And I think, Emmanuel, as a build on that, what is interesting is that, and I agree with you, I mean, where I get really excited about is about those type of live streamings that are highly targeted to a specific type of audience that is selected, what the entire experience and journey is going to be designed accordingly. And what is really interesting is that the platform that, in my perception, seems to be the most relevant to do that is actually Wechat, which is a platform that was not part of any conversation when we talk about live streaming. But once you couple that ability to host a live stream on a mini program with social CRM capabilities that will allow you to segment your audience and to decide who's going to attend what type of live streaming, and to drive after that to a seamless act of purchase or whatever is the transaction the conversion you're aiming for, that brings very interesting perspectives and complements to the traditional model of the live streaming broadcasting that we're looking at the moment.
100% agree, Pablo.
Yeah, 100%. The same. Absolutely. We're seeing basically what we call the rise of the private traffic versus the public traffic. And this is something that is mainly which is mainly done in Wechat. I invite everyone to look at Meogen and Demystifying report that came out, I think Q3 of last year. They were analyzing a little bit what are the differences between the public and the private traffic and how they're being used in China effectively by different type of brands. It's very, very insightful.
Thank you so much, guys. Amazing insights. Actually, just earlier this week, we also had a panel for bloggers in China. And some of them represent independent bloggers, others represent MCNs. And actually, this question, there was a very similar question. Live streaming for luxury brands, yay or nay? And 3 out of 4 bloggers said nay. Luxury doesn't sell through live streaming. But then there was one that exactly mentioned that of course, when you talk about broad live streaming and, discounts and, just big traffic for conversion, right? There will be a lot of returns and it will be very difficult to have positive ROI or positive effect on your brand. But if you are going through this educational story, if you're going through private, very targeted groups on Wechat, that has a lot of potential. So this is gorgeous that we're all aligned on that. Marco, I hope that we answered your question. And with this, we're going to
thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to Delphine. Delphine, your question, please.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Ashley, for taking my question. I work in e-commerce and digital industry for luxury watch brands, and I'm a Chinese based in Switzerland. So today my question is about data privacy. So we know that the regards towards data privacy is quite different in China and in Europe, for example. If I can take the example of, the successful implementation of the health QR code in China. Of course, there is a push from the government, but I think also is because a lot of people, they're willing to give their data to make sure that everyone can live in a safer environment. So this is something that is quite hard to imagine in the European perspective. So my question is, when a global luxury brand localize their CRM or data approach inside of the Chinese market, especially on the social platforms, should they, embrace this mentality completely, this mentality that totally different ways of doing things, or should they still keep a certain, kind of guidelines without compromising the experience for the local customers? And I also know that, I also know that there is, today the Chinese government is also, restraining their data privacy policies. Maybe that is only a start. So for you, is this a kind of a signal? And if yes, what is the potential impact for the global luxury brands inside of the Chinese market? Thank you very much.
So I'll take that one. Back in 2017, there's a law that was passed by the PRC, the new cybersecurity law, that really kind of like aligned itself with the GDPR that everyone knows in Europe and a bit of the US as well. And that new law really was actually increasing the data privacy protection for the Chinese consumers. And this is something that I personally had to handle, because at the time we were looking into how do we build some of those guidelines, and how do we build some of those guardrails in terms of some of the data that we were recording, that we were gaining, that we were getting, and that was the work was done for Nestle. And just to answer your question, you do need to ensure that you are pretty much aware of that law. It came out on June the 1st, 2017. It's called Cybersecurity Law. And it does define very specific data privacy guidelines and protection for the Chinese consumers. For example, one of the output of that is that you can't, for example, do specific targeting or marketing or approach for children under the age of 12. This is something that not a lot of people are actually aware of, but in China, this is not something that you're allowed to do. Another thing is you need, for any data that is being recorded, that is being saved about the Chinese consumer, has to be hosted in China. That's why platforms like Shopify or Amazon really they might actually struggle a lot, because their servers are actually outside of China. Some of them decided to start creating servers in Singapore. But you need to ensure that you are very much aware of that law, because it does govern currently the approach in terms of data privacy when it comes to the market.
And add a quick note to that as well. We do a lot of data residency, data privacy work for our clients. The big challenge that the global brands are having is data residency in combination with a global view of their customers, right? So that obviously the big luxury houses and all the individual brands, they want to have a global view of all their consumers. They want to have a view of their Chinese consumers and the behavior, so that they can do their clienteling and activities, etc. The issue is the legislation obviously prohibits that really from storing that outside of China. So first of all, you need to ensure that you capture all the data in China. And then according to the law that Em just referenced, you can then transfer that data to a back office system for processing. Now, it's a little bit vague in terms of whether or not marketing and clienteling is actually then considered processing, but you could assume yes. Now, there is also, there's going to be a new law coming out. The draft is already out there. Maybe if you add me on WeChat or something, I can send you the link to the new draft, which actually is more stringent. It's going to be very much in line with GDPR in Europe. so with the right to be forgotten and all those kind of things. And what they say there in terms of customer data is that you're going to need a official approval from the government and a certificate to move data from China out to your own CRM. So that's something that may come into effect as well in the future, that we as people, guardians of customer data for marketing purpose for our clients need to understand and get a handle on how that's going to be enforced by Chinese government.
Yeah, and just a quick note in terms of the suppliers, so you can actually try to reach out to people like, we work with people like Oracle and Microsoft. They're doing a lot of work in terms of anonymizing a lot of those personal information, the PII data concerning the consumers. And henceforth, they are even more stringent in terms of how they're putting together the software, the tech to handle the data, even more stringent than what you can find in the GDPR or what will come up very soon in China as well. So you do have already some solutions in place, and you just need to be well informed in terms of the law and what kind of solutions are available in the market today.
I think that what is interesting is in what is being shared right now is that if you look at all the areas that we mentioned as problematic, they are all linked to elements of global infrastructure. And I think that really means that when you look at it from a brand point of view on how do you build your data infrastructure in China, on all those elements of data that are very specific to the market, starting with behavioral data collected on WeChat, for example, with the WeChat backend or with the social CRM backend, building a CDP, all those elements, I mean, you're going to have to work with local tech providers no matter what. And it's their job more than yours to respect the cybersecurity law. The risk is going to come when it comes to integrating with your global infrastructure, and that data collected locally is going to have to be fetched back into a global infrastructure. And I think that this is an interesting point. This is an interesting observation, because this is really, in my perception, the biggest challenge that international brands are facing right now when it comes to setting up their CRM infrastructure in China. And it's just elements of global infrastructure that are irritated from the market, from the global market, and that slowly is getting there. I think you were asking on how much we should take that seriously. It's true that the thing with the cybersecurity law is that brands were not overly concerned, at least not all of them, to address that, simply because it was very partially addressed by the government. Last year, Salesforce rushed to communicate about an announcement with Alibaba that would address their potential challenges right now of not having servers in China. It's something that is going to come through at some point. And I think it's a very good illustration of the fact that this is a topic that needs to be taken with an increasing concern and more seriously. Because with the new draft that Michelle was mentioning and so on, I think it's just a matter of time before the government start to really enforce all the elements of the cybersecurity law.
Incredible discussions. Thank you so much. And in fact, we see that soon brands might need to innovate specifically for China and for their global operations, because we see that across many industries that there is this decoupling of internet and digital economies happening more and more. So let's see how that plays out in the next couple of years. Delphine, I'm sure that we have answered your question. Thank you so much for raising this.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
And we're moving on to Shirley. Shirley, please get on stage and ask your question.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Hi, everyone. I'm Shirley. It's really inspiring to hear everyone's speech today. I truly learned a lot. I am a master's student currently at INSEAD Business School, and I plan to enter the marketing industry for luxury brands as well. I just have a question on kind of like a phenomenon in the Chinese market. I'm pretty sure for those of you who are in China and in the luxury business would know about the existence of the counterfeits, or like the fake products that a lot of Chinese factories are producing, especially in Shenzhen and in Guangzhou area. So I just want to ask, what are your opinions on those products? Because it's quite the black market exists for a long time and is apparently illegal, but the government doesn't really eliminate it yet, and it's still out there. It's quite popular. And it's big in terms of the range of their products. They produce bags, shoes, clothes, like every product that the brand produces, but they sell it at only even not 10th of the original price. And they claim to use original materials and be the same with the real products. So I want to ask whether you guys would see this kind of side market as a threat to the brand itself, or would you see them as irrelevant to your marketing or like brand success? Thank you.
I'll take that question. Tom, go ahead.
Oh yes, Shirley, thank you so much for your question. I've worked for 16 years for two brands that really have been very much focused on the anti-counterfeiting and have a zero tolerance policy regarding counterfeiting, which is Louis Vuitton and Cartier. But I think it's a global topic. So first of all, to answer your question about whether it's a great marketing tool to promote, to give the brand more visibility, the first rule is that only those brands get copied that are desirable. So in a way, yes, it makes it of course increases exposure, but it is not the exposure the brands can tolerate in order to preserve the brand equity. And we have seen now LVMH, I think, when it comes to that topic, I think LVMH is ahead of anybody else in the luxury goods industry. Whereas maybe Kering is leading in sustainability in the luxury goods industry. On anti-counterfeiting, it's LVMH. I think just recently, Louis Vuitton launched its own blockchain to help consumers trace provenance and authenticity. And as the circular market is exploding, and we see more and more secondhand luxury goods platforms, Remark, Vestiaire, and all the others strive and grow and expand also into the Chinese market. Authenticity is the most important thing. So if you buy a bag, and also the great issue here is that the quality of these fakes has significantly increased. I remember that when I was 10 years ago, 15 years ago in London, you were walking down Oxford Street and there was these little huts where you can find a Louis Vuitton Neverfull for £10. Already, when you buy a Louis Vuitton Neverfull for £10 in the street, that it can't be an original. But still, it is a huge damage to the brands. And I do think it is something governments have to fight. The French government is, of course, very strict on this topic. And there are severe penalties for anybody who even buys or is seen at the check-in with fake luxury products. And I do think it's in the interest of the Chinese government to think about taking more measures against this industry, which also has a very strong potential criminal origin. And it's also, in the interest what we discussed before, as China has become the epicenter of luxury, and the money the Chinese have spent previously abroad is now spent in domestic market. I think it's very important also to ensure that this market is secured and that is protecting controlled labor and the authenticity of products. So that's just my point of view on your question, Shirley.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly jump on to what Tom said. I think he's absolutely right. LVMH, to that point, is miles ahead of the other brands. Primarily, as what he said, they have these QR codes on the products these days where you can actually trace back to the origin of that particular product, especially bags, because those are the items that are quite frequently counterfeited. At the same time, what they're also doing is they're educating the customers. I'll give you an example. Fendi recently released a video basically showing the stitching on the bag. And they say that, okay, on any bag, we will have at least 120 stitches, which are handmade, right? So you'll have the other stitching, which is done by machine, but you'll have about 120 stitches, which are handmade. So if you're buying a Fendi bag, you can spot those hand-stitched, the stitching on the leather. So stuff like that. So they're really focusing on educating their customer. But I think besides the counterfeiting part, what's another particular industry that is quite a risk for the luxury brands is the Daigou industry, and or the gray market industry, and that's something that the government has tried to put a cap on it. It's still a work in progress, in my opinion. But I think that's probably a bigger threat to them than the fake goods that are or the counterfeits that are floating around in the market. Primarily because this is having a direct impact on their revenue for each brand. So they're trying to kind of put a curve on it, but they're still quite far behind in terms of figuring out a solution for the Daigou industry. But as far as the counterfeits are concerned, Tom did mention it is the most desirable brands are the ones that get counterfeited. And you will usually, and nowadays you'll see that any latest bag that has come out or any latest dress or shoes that have come out have already been counterfeited and they're in the market. And the counterfeiters are getting smart. They're not selling them for really cheap. So you'll probably find something on Tmall mentioning that, we've Daigou'd this particular product, but it's actually manufactured in Dong'an or Guangzhou, and they're charging like 25 or 5,000 RMB for that particular product. So you're a little confused. Is it real? Is it not? Because they've Daigou'd it, so it's should be half the price. And that's what's actually the trend that's happening these days, is the mix of the counterfeit and the Daigou part. How the brands kind of putting a clamp on this is like what you said. If you buy a product like that and if you scan the QR code, you can, at least for majority of the LVMH brands, it is a policy that they have to track back the lineage of the brand, of the product, where it was made, where it was sent to, shipped to, etc., etc. Even if it's secondhand, they have to do that. So that's one thing. And then, of course, the brands are educating their consumers quite frequently. But we'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, I might say something a bit controversial. What I could see, actually, again, based on the data that I'm seeing in the market, is that the counterfeit industry in China is actually losing a lot of grounds. And that's mainly due because, obviously, everyone knows about the fact that more and more people are getting more and more wealthier in China. So people are getting money. And also the consumption, it triggers the reason why people are buying luxury. A lot of the buying is actually self-gifting. It's something that people are buying to congratulate themselves or mark a specific milestone. And when it comes to that, I think that is one of the biggest challenge for counterfeits, because people do not want to buy something for themselves, which is fake. Usually, I could see, and I was seeing a lot of people buying a lot of counterfeit more in terms of trying to show off to other people. But when you want to buy something for yourself, or when you want to gift that something, to someone really close or to your family member, then the counterfeit is not something that you will see as a solution to it. And that's why maybe we are seeing the numbers of the Daigou really kind of falling off a cliff last year. They were just basically completely running out of the business. So I'm really going to say that counterfeit might actually not become such a huge issue going forward in China. I guess maybe that's controversial.
Wonderful insights, Shirley. I'm sure that we've covered your question, right?
Yes, thank you very much for it.
Awesome. And now we have one more question from Asdu. How are you?
Hi, everyone. This is Serena here. I'm a lawyer working for an international law firm called Burr, and we actually have a lot of intellectual property infringement issues. So if everyone, you don't mind, I can just chip in on the previous topic about counterfeit to share some of our European client or some other luxury client, their struggle in China on counterfeit. For example, in the past, we have discussed with a client about their struggling to admit they have a counterfeit issue. For example, they asked us like if they should make announcement to their targeted distribution, like dealership, etc., just to warn them there's a counterfeit in the market or not. Because on one hand, this can like give alert to everyone, like you need to be careful when you buy some suspicious product in the market. But on the other hand, you're telling your targeted customer that you might get cheated when buying our product. So because if the brand, they teach the consumer like how to tell the genuine product and counterfeit product, at the same time, you're teaching those counterfeit producer as well at the same time, and they are really fast learner. So in this case, our client, what their strategy is usually they say keep the length of the wild grass at certain level, which means you cannot let the counterfeit grow too much in the market, not to get market flooded by the counterfeit, but you still need to take actions like cooperate with Alibaba, those e-commerce platform, like to control the unauthorized channel dealer when they want to sell the product on e-commerce, and also at the same time the company give very limited control budget, because this expectation to completely remove counterfeit from the market is a little bit unrealistic. So we have to manage our client expectation as well. So from the lawyer perspective, I think as long as we can try our best, communicate with the local government. For example, I work for the European Chamber. We are lobbying the local government. For example, they need to take the action not only on counterfeit, but also on those copycat who look similar as counterfeit, not completely the same, but may mislead the Chinese consumer who is not exposed to the original product. So they are, we see they are progressively taking more actions on both counterfeit and copycat. So in this case, I think as long as the counterfeit won't diminish the original value of the brand, and then in this case, our the consumer will not worry that they will carry, for example, the same bag as those grandma who is going to the wet market and buying vegetable, for example. So this is my sharing for the previous topic.
Great insight. Thank you, Sidi.
So my question actually back to our this session is that we are talking about Chinese brand, right? Like Shanghai Tan, some other Li Ning, they have new designs to catch this trend. My question actually back then is whether those brand with Chinese trend can be popular worldwide, especially in Western market. Like either we see some luxury hospitality that are entering into European market or other market like Puli Hotel. I know they are trying to build some Chinese style hotel in Europe. And also like BYD, they are also exporting their Chinese branded car to Norway. And also those luxury fashion design clothes like Shanghai Tan, they have those dragon design, yin yang, those peony red lavish style. I wonder if the Western market will open to this Chinese oriented element design. That's my question.
I can take it. I think we talked a little bit earlier about some of those.
I would hope the answers are very yes. Sorry, you want to go ahead, Em?
No, go ahead. I just wanted to mention that we talked earlier about the influence that we could see of the Chinese brands already on the fashion shows that we saw in Paris, as well as, for example, in Italy. So, but yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, I do think there are great opportunities there, but it's all about also striking the right tone. When you target the Western communities with your brand. A good example is, for example, the jewelry industry, where you have, of course, Tiffany, Cartier, Bulgari, and all the other beautiful brands dominating the worldwide market. But there's an absolute giant in China called Chow Tai Fook, who is a similar giant as Tiffany and Cartier, but they have yet failed to really capitalize on their great expertise and the various brands in the Western markets. And I do think this is the question also is how strong has been the determination of these Chinese brands to grow across the US and Western markets while there is so much low-hanging fruit in the domestic market, because, of course, the growth in the Chinese market is not only gigantic for those foreign luxury brands, but it's also, of course, a fantastic market for all your local brands. So I do think it's just a question of time when this will change, and we will see much more happening also in Western markets regarding the success of these Chinese native brands.
I can give you a couple of brands which have actually been quite successful already internationally. Obviously, a lot of people in China already know about GmbY, but I don't know if a lot of people know actually about a brand called Suzhi. Suzhi actually is a brand that was created by the person's, her name is Suzhi.
How do you spell it, Em? How do you spell it?
Xuzhi. It's a self-named brand. And that designer, actually, a lot of his work has been, for example, featured on both Business of Fashion and Forbes as well. And the reason why he's so successful, first of all, is because he's capturing something quite unique in China. That's number one. And number two, he's actually, did his classes. I mean, he was working with J.W. Anderson. I don't know if you guys know him. And J.W. Anderson is someone that was also working with Loewe before. So that's one of the Chinese brand which is really picking up and doing and getting a lot of traction. Another one which is actually quite interesting is Didu. I don't know if you guys know of it. It's also another brand which actually has been featured again in Vogue. It has been seen being worn by some of the foreign celebrities, for example, La Corbidi. You have another brand called Robert Woon as well, W-U-N. And this is someone who studied actually fashion in the London College of Fashion. And a lot of the stuff he's doing has been noticed by a lot of the buyers, from Alexander McQueen, to Gucci. And you could actually see Lady Gaga as well as some other celebrities like Celine Dion wearing some of these design. So to answer your question, yeah, we can definitely see that the fashion style and some of the creation and the design coming from China is actually picking up traction. And I talk about it before in terms of the fashion show in Paris, the last fashion show in Paris, how much impacted and influenced it was by the Chinese designer.
I'd just like to chip on to that. Another very popular brand, jewelry brand outside of China, Chinese brand, is Lau Fung Xiang. I don't. These guys I think they have about 3,500 stores worldwide. They're in New York, Sydney, Phoenix, a lot of these places. And this is one jewelry brand that is quite well known outside. I think they call it Feng Xiang jewelry or something like that. But on top of that, I think what the trend that we see now is that there's a lot of fashion, a lot of luxury labels coming out of everywhere. There's a lot of jewelry labels that are coming out of India, specifically diamond jewelry that's becoming really popular outside. A lot of fashion that's coming out of Ethiopia and some of the other African nations that are becoming really popular, especially with this with the Black Pride movement, etc. So there's this huge wave of fashion and luxury that's coming out of different places, which was probably not given a platform previously, but now everybody's looking at these smaller niche designers, etc., that are coming out. So I think this is probably the right time for Chinese fashion, Chinese luxury to start targeting the West as well. Just a few points.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lena, for bringing us your insights and also asking this question. It was a beautiful way to almost end this session. And to end this session of our 12-hour Digital China Day, I would like all of you, Em, Pablo, Urvash, Tom, Michelle, give us your best tip for luxury brands or somebody who's working in luxury industry for China in 2021. What is your biggest tip? What shall we watch out for? Wisdom time, 30 seconds per person.
I'll go first. Watch out for O2O2O. Online to offline to online. Offline experiences. We're doing a lot of good stuff with our VMH that's going to come out really soon, so keep an eye out.
I'm going to say build direct relationship with your client, and build them now. Go hard or go out this year.
I would like to chip in. I would think that it would be great for those big luxury brands to give back to the Chinese people with social and environmental and ethical projects, really supporting those minorities in the country that still struggle. I think it's a time where the luxury goods industry earned a lot of money from this most important emerging market globally. I think it's time for them also to consider to really invest in CSR, corporate social responsibility, and giving back to the Chinese population.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually, Tom, 100%. Ethical and social justice definitely should be and are gaining traction and being at the core of luxury for this year in China. I would also say, looking at some of the work I'm doing with some of those luxury brands going to the market or trying to survive what's going on or trying to grow, what I'm seeing as well is actually a lot of efforts being put into understanding some of those subgroups, those subcultures that we spoke about earlier in the earlier sections. And this is super important because it's not so much just like, the post-90s or post-95s and so forth. It's really understanding, what are those tribes that are in China, and luxury currently is really gaining a lot of insights, a lot of understanding of those tribes, because that's the only way you are going to be able to be completely unique and you're going to stand out.
This is absolutely awesome. Pablo, go ahead.
I think that get excited about e-commerce, but yes, get committed, get ready to invest, and make sure to not just focus on top-line growth. Make sure that what you're building is a sustainable model, and that also allow you to generate profit out of it. And the second one, when it comes to revenue growth, is don't just look at customer acquisition, look at customer retention. I think that brands too often are focused on customer acquisition, thinking that customer retention is something that will come later down the road. Well, you want to start building your asset in terms of customers' data as soon as you offer the possibility of purchasing your products online.
Awesome stuff. And guys, this was absolutely phenomenal. Before we wrap up, I would like to bring Peggy back on stage. She's got an announcement for all of you China watchers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley and Nishtha and George and everybody who's been here for, oh my God, 12 hours and 5 minutes. What an amazing marathon. And these rooms about China seem to be huge marathons. We're going to run so many of them. If you're interested in participating and sharing your stories, and I know you have them, about mainland China, living in and working with China, do follow me here on Clubhouse with the bell so you can be notified when we have rooms or I speak. Follow all the moderators, all the speakers on the panel. Do a follow and a bell. And if you're interested in coordinating with over 800 people now on Wechat Groups who are interested in being a window to the West about China, do add me on Wechat at Shanghai Peggy, one word, and I will make sure that you get all the information you need on the group calendar, how to sign up as a speaker, and the different Wechat groups on different topics. So can we give a hand? Can we unmute if I can ask all the speakers to unmute and just give Ashley and George and Nishtha a big hand, a big round of applause, a thank you, a big hug, and a clap. Yeah, George, thank you. Thank you so much, Peggy. Absolutely amazing. So, guys, as a closing remark, remember that we have captured this 12-hour marathon on China on audio, and we're going to be sharing it in our WeChat groups. If you're not yet a part of the WeChat groups, please connect with Peggy on Shanghai Peggy, one word, on WeChat, and she's going to add you onto a relevant group, and you will have access to all these amazing data. Once again, big hand to our speakers, Pablo, Urash, Tom, Michelle. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So much value. And I couldn't have asked for better partners to go into this marathon than Peggy, Nishtha, and George. We had a couple of other amazing moderators, Arnold and others. It was absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, everybody. And have a phenomenal day. Let's go get them. Woohoo! Happy Chinese New Year.